The WNBA is embroiled in yet another controversy that exemplifies everything wrong with the way the league treats its biggest star. Shocking footage seems to show Brittney Griner calling Caitlin Clark an effing white girl after she fouled out against the Indiana Fever. The league, which has benefited greatly from Clark's star power, is in the midst of yet another scandal in which she says, some I hate says something about that effing white girl. Can you imagine the outrage if Caitlin Clark had said those things? I'm not sure what she said, but it seems like she said some really disrespectful things. All right, let's look at what she said. I'm not a lip reader, but it looked like she said, fingy white girls. Oh man, effing trash, effing white girls, effing trash right there. Effing white. What happened on Thursday night during the Indiana Fever's 8-176 victory over the Atlanta Dream was nothing short of this. The way WNBA players treat Caitlin Clark, Brittney Griner, who was traded for the Russian Merchant of Death and became a global sensation, is shameful but regrettably not surprising. It seems that she couldn't handle being outplayed by a 22-year-old point guard who weighs roughly half as much as she does. The post from Brittney Griner and I is unclear, but one thing that baffles me is that there is some sort of tenuous evidence that she says, I'm not lip, like we're not lip readers, we're not lip readers. After struggling mightily throughout the game, scoring only 5 points in 25 minutes, Griner was ejected from the game for accruing too many fouls. However, instead of leaving the court with the respect that professional athletes are supposed to have, cameras captured her mouthing the words trash and fucking white girl in reference to Caitlin Clark. Let that sink in for a second. Griner is a seasoned athlete who should be setting an example for younger athletes who use racial slurs, because she couldn't stand being outplayed by someone half her size. Brittney Griner fouled out late in the fourth quarter and was in foul trouble the entire time. The referees were calling everything on her, even though the Indiana Fever didn't actually get a chance to shoot many free throws that game. Brittney Griner was upset about it, man. Now, footage has surfaced showing a few different interpretations of this clip and what she actually said. Some people claim she didn't call Kayla. Although lip reading isn't a precise science, the visual evidence is so damning that even casual observers can see what seems to be happening. This isn't some ambiguous gesture or unclear audio. Rather, it's a professional athlete who appears to use racial language against a fellow basketball player because she couldn't handle her own poor performance on the court. Clark is an effing white girl. Some people claim that she said what an effing whack call at the end of the day. Griner said something that Brittney Griner was captured on camera. Yes, there seems to be some lip reading going on, but I don't think it takes a genius to figure out what she was saying. By the way, she was kicked out of a WNBA game against Caitlin Clark in the Indiana Fever. She now plays for the Atlanta Dream. So here we go. Joe Biden acquired Brittney Griner 2 years ago in what may have been the most lopsided trade ever. This side of Deshaun Watson was captured on camera saying what seemed to be some unflattering remarks about white girl Caitlin Clark during. When it happened, Caitlin Clark didn't even have a spectacular night by her standards, scoring only 11 points in the victory. This wasn't a situation where Clark dropped 30 points and embarrassed Griner in front of a national audience. Rather, it was just one player doing her job while another player completely lost her composure and apparently used language that would get any other employee fired from any other workplace in America. If you're enjoying her little WNBA game last night, please subscribe. In addition to the Griner incident, Caitlin Clark was involved in another controversy during that same game that exemplifies the hostile environment she experiences every night she steps onto a WNBA court. Clark and Ryan Howard got into an altercation during the game that resulted in both players receiving technical fouls. The league responded to this incident by fining both players $30 as if they were equally responsible for whatever happened between them. Take a moment to consider that the WNBA looked at an altercation between their biggest star and another player and determined that a $30 fine, which is the equivalent of pocket change for professional athletes, was a suitable punishment for both parties. However, the league has responded in silence when Brittney Griner appears to use racial epithets against that same star player. These are racist women who were taught that they are black and that this is the only way they can outperform white people in sports, and this is their league's right. Then you have a young, stereotypical white girl who is pretty skinny, and better than that, she enters the sport and becomes the Michael Jordan, LeBron James of the WNBA. The face receives more publicity on one of their games than they have ever had in some of their playoff games, and any of their games ever bring in more money. They are very jealous and won't admit it. They want to make it seem like regular basketball, but they have made it clear that no one cared about their league before Angel Reese and the Brittney Griners. This is an example of the kind of selective enforcement and double standards that have become the WNBA's. When it comes to safeguarding Caitlin Clark, the league is quick to place equal blame and impose matching sanctions whenever Clark gets into a physical altercation. This is as if the player who has revolutionized their sport is somehow equally responsible for every unpleasant interaction she has. But when other players cross boundaries that shouldn't exist in professional sports, the league suddenly exhibits selective blindness. The $30 fine for the Howard incident is even more absurd when you consider the financial contributions Caitlin Clark makes to the WNBA. The league treats her like any other player when it comes to punishment, but it refuses to shield her when she is the victim of truly inappropriate behavior. What we're seeing with the Griner incident and the wider treatment of Caitlin Clark isn't isolated behavior. Rather, it's part of a systematic pattern of targeting that has become so evident that it's impossible to ignore. Her presence alone has the power to transform a Tuesday night game into a cultural event whose jersey sales have broken league records and whose games regularly attract television audiences that other WNBA games can only hope to attract. We have another instance where Brittney Griner claims that I said something about that effing white girl. Can you imagine the outrage if Caitlin Clark had said those things? I was saying that Angelus, the black girl, was fleeing from that. Why is it that black players can be openly racist and that racist comments are being investigated, but you can be racist toward a white girl who is drawing so many attention to the WNBA? Now, Brittney Griner seems to be taking this targeting to a whole new level by using offensive language in her annoyance at Clark's success. The pattern is obvious. When players are unable to match Caitlin Clark's basketball skill, drawing power, or professional demeanor, they turn to creating controversy, creating drama, or in Griner's case, apparently using language that has no place in professional sports. It's like watching a group of adults become so frustrated with a child's success that they turn to playground bullying tactics, except for this veteran player who seems to be crossing racial lines because she can't handle being outplayed by someone who embodies everything the league should be celebrating. It's as if some players have made attacking Clark their main contribution to basketball discourse rather than concentrating on their own games. Believe that Bob Griner said trash followed by white girl. Now, these are supposed to be professional athletes representing the highest level of women's basketball. What's even more troubling is how predictable this pattern has become. Every time Clark has a successful game, every time she breaks another attendance record, and every time she attracts new fans to the sport, you can practically predict when the next manufactured controversy will arise. The WNBA's complete failure to protect the player who has done more for their league than anyone in recent memory may be the most frustrating aspect of this whole situation. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not a lip reader, so I'm not sure what she said, but once again, perception is all that matters. The WNBA players' perception is that Caitlin Clark is white, and I believe that's the main reason they dislike her. She has also helped the league become more popular. When confronted with footage that seems to show one of their players using racial language against their biggest star, the WNBA has chosen to pretend it never happened rather than confront it head-on. This isn't just poor leadership, it's cowardly leadership that puts avoiding difficult conversations ahead of upholding professional standards. The league's silence on the Griner incident speaks volumes about their priorities and their spine or lack thereof, product to a cultural phenomenon. The league's inaction on the Griner incident is even more egregious when you compare it to how other professional sports leagues handle similar situations. They were quick to assign equal blame for the Howard altercation, indicating that they are perfectly capable of taking action when it suits their purposes, but when they encounter what appears to be racial language directed at their star player, they suddenly become paralyzed. The question is, though, what would happen if you caught one of the white players? You understand what I mean when I say that if Caitlin Clark were to say something along those lines with her lips, the internet would blow up and people would be attacking her from all sides. You already have some people, particularly in the media, saying, oh yeah, Caitlin Clark, always get these special whistles. She's this, she's that race, this race, that. I can only imagine what would happen if she messed around and had a video that was comparable to this. Come on, family. From a purely commercial standpoint, the WNBA's failure to... One of the short-sightedest decisions made in modern sports management is to protect Caitlin Clark. This isn't just about doing the right thing, though that should be enough. It's about protecting an investment that has revolutionized their entire industry. Caitlin Clark's influence on WNBA attendance, television ratings, and merchandise sales isn't just a matter of opinion. It's a quantifiable fact that it appears in every financial metric the league tracks. Her games routinely draw far larger crowds than other WNBA games. Her jersey is the league's best-selling item, and her presence has drawn sponsors. As players like Angel Reese can spend months creating controversies without consequence, or Brittney Griner can apparently use horrible language without facing suspension, it creates an atmosphere where targeting Clark becomes acceptable.
This approach is not only morally wrong but financially suicidal. The WNBA spent decades struggling for relevance. As a result, the league appears determined to undermine the success by allowing other players to create toxic environments around their biggest draw. A person said, "I will be reaching out to the WNBA to ask Kayla Clark a trash-effing white girl violates this recent announcement. No tolerance for racism and no space for hate campaign will report back." That's interesting because we know that Caitlin Clark has been battling for television coverage and pleading with fans to care about their product. However, after she arrives and single-handedly resolves many of these issues, the league fails to protect her from the very players who should be thanking her for elevating their sport. When an employee significantly raises the value and profile of your company, you protect them from workplace harassment, toxic behavior, and hostile environments. You don't let other employees target them with impunity while acting as though it's not your responsibility to uphold professional standards. Brittney Griner's suspension would be more than just a punishment for one player for inappropriate behavior. It would be the WNBA's final decision. The league has the chance to make a statement that racial language, regardless of the situation, has no place in professional basketball by establishing and enforcing professional standards that protect all players, especially their most valuable ones. Think about the message that a suspension would send throughout the league. It would let players know that using racial language to target other athletes will have serious repercussions, not just social media controversy. It would show that the league takes workplace harassment seriously and won't tolerate behavior that would be unacceptable in Fingling. More importantly, it would demonstrate to Caitlin Clark and other players that the WNBA takes seriously upholding professional standards and shielding its athletes from hostile conduct. This isn't about giving star players preferential treatment. Rather, it's about basic professional conduct that should be applicable to everyone regardless of their popularity or status. What is the WNBA's current policy regarding respect for fellow players and racially motivated hostility? I mean, what are we doing here? Caitlin Clark's treatment is a microcosm of when the league's biggest star is subjected to constant harassment and targeting without league intervention. It sends a message to young girls watching that success will make you a target rather than a celebrated achievement. This approach not only harms Clark personally, but it also harms women's basketball as a whole. The WNBA appears content to allow these players to become targets for frustrated competitors who cannot match their impact or success, rather than celebrating and protecting the players who elevate the sport. The long-term effects of this strategy go far beyond any one incident. If the WNBA allows its stars to be targeted with impunity, it runs the risk of creating an environment where talented players might choose other opportunities rather than subjecting themselves to systematic harassment. It also runs the risk of alienating the new fans that players like Clark brought to the sport, fans who came to watch basketball excellence rather than reality television drama. The Brittney Griner incident is a turning point for the WNBA. The league can either finally create professional standards that protect all players from inappropriate behavior, or it can continue down its current path of selective enforcement. The majority of the league is made up of black women, and they have done everything in their power to prevent Caitlin Clark from joining. When a white girl joins a league with a majority of black players, her presence brings more viewers and ad money. If accepted, the Caitlin Clark tide will rise for all boats. A suspension for Griner would send a clear message that racial language has no place in professional basketball and that the league is serious about protecting its players from hostile behavior. It would also show that success on the court does not excuse inappropriate conduct and that the WNBA operates with consistent standards for all players regardless of their status or popularity. However, doing nothing would confirm what many observers already suspect.